On the night of November 3rd, 2019, Dr. Mara Sollund fell asleep at her own equipment. She was 41. She'd been running sleep studies for 11 years. She knew better. Her monitoring station recorded everything: brainwave activity, REM cycles, respiratory rate, eye movement. Standard protocol. The kind of data she'd reviewed thousands of times without flinching. That night, the recording ran for 4 hours and 17 minutes. Not a single anomaly. Delta waves steady. Breathing slow. Nothing unusual until the final 43 seconds, when, in her own voice, clear as a confession, she said, "I opened the door." She had no memory of speaking, no memory of dreaming, just the recording and the fact that when she woke up, her chair had moved 14 inches closer to the wall. What she'd been studying for the 8 months before that night is the part that should concern you. The Landspítali Sleep Research Institute occupies the lower 2 floors of a concrete annex built in 1987, attached to the east wing of the main hospital in Reykjavik. Fluorescent lighting, low ceilings, the kind of building that feels like it was designed to discourage lingering. Dr. Sollund took the directorship of the Sleep Neurology Division in March 2018 after 7 years at a research center in Bergen. She specialized in parasomnia, the category of disorders that includes sleepwalking, night terrors, and the more obscure phenomena: sleep paralysis with hallucination, REM behavior disorder, exploding head syndrome. Things the brain does when it isn't supposed to be doing anything at all. Her first cohort of patients at Landspítali was small. 6 individuals, referred from general neurology, all presenting with chronic treatment-resistant nightmares. Ages range from 28 to 63. 3 men, 3 women. No shared history. No known connection. 2 had never left Iceland. 1 had lived in 4 different countries. Standard intake. Standard monitoring. EEG leads, polysomnography, the overnight stay in one of the Institute's 4 sleep rooms. The first anomaly appeared in the transcribed dream reports. Patient 1, a 44-year-old fisherman from Akureyri named Gunnar Rarsson, described his recurring nightmare in detail during his intake interview. "A room," he said, "always the same room. Cracked plaster on the ceiling, a single bare bulb overhead, and a door at the far end that he always felt the urge to approach but never reached." The dream ended before he got there. Every time, Mara noted it. She noted everything. Patient 3 was a 31-year-old graduate student named Dís Eriksdóttir. She described her nightmare during her own intake 2 days later. "A room." She paused in the middle of the sentence, looked slightly off to the side, the way people do when they're seeing something that isn't in front of them. "Cracked ceiling," she said. "1 light bulb. A door." Mara stopped writing. She went back to Gunnar's file that evening. Read his description word by word. Then read Dís. Then called patient 2, a 57-year-old retired engineer named Haraldur Magnusson, and asked him to describe his nightmare. He sighed, like it was a question he was tired of answering. "A room," he said. "You know how ceilings get when the plaster starts to go? And there's this light, just one, just hanging there. And at the end there's a door. 3 patients. 3 completely separate referrals. The same room. She didn't sleep that night. Not because she was afraid, because she thought, still, that it was a coincidence. A cognitive artifact. Something she could explain. She was wrong, but she wouldn't know that for another 4 months. By February 2019, the cohort had expanded to 19 patients. 14 of the 19 described the room. Not a room like it. The room. Identical dimensions. Each patient, asked independently, estimated the space at roughly 4 meters by 6. The ceiling always the same height. The bulb always the same dull amber. The door always the same proportion, always the same distance from where the dreamer stood. And the door was always closed. Mara began documenting obsessively. She constructed a composite sketch using the descriptions alone, then showed it, without context, to each patient individually. Every single one said yes. That's it. That's exactly it. She contacted colleagues, first in Iceland, then abroad. A sleep researcher named Dr. Bauer at the University de Lausanne had published a paper in 2016 on shared dream imagery in trauma patients. Mara emailed him on a Tuesday. He called her back that same evening. He'd seen it too. Different patients, different country, different decade. A room, the same room. His cohort had been smaller. 6 patients over a 2-year study in 2013 and 2014. He dismissed it, attributed it to the universality of certain spatial memories. The childhood bedroom, the institutional corridor, the enclosed space that appears in anxiety dreams cross-culturally. He'd convinced himself it was pattern recognition, pareidolia of the unconscious. But he hadn't done what Mara did next. She started collecting the details that didn't fit the universal template. The crack in the ceiling. Bauer's patients described it too. Not a crack in a general sense, but a specific crack. Diagonal, starting from the upper left corner of the room, branching once, ending approximately 30 centimeters from the bulb. Like a river on a map. Like something had tried to push through from the other side. She found a third researcher through an obscure forum thread on sleep methodology. A Chilean psychiatrist named Dr. Valentina Orostegui, working at a private clinic in Valparaiso. Orostegui had posted in 2017, asking if anyone had encountered convergent nightmare imagery across unconnected patients. The thread had 3 replies. 2 were dismissive. 1 was from an account that had since been deleted. Her patients were different from Mara's in almost every demographic. Younger, predominantly male, referred for entirely different presenting conditions. But the room was there, and Orostegui had documented something Mara hadn't yet noticed. None of her patients, not one, had ever described opening the door. They all stopped before reaching it. Some woke up. Some described the dream looping, resetting, returning them to the starting position. One patient, a 19-year-old named Sebastian Morel, reported having the dream 47 nights consecutively. Every night he walked toward the door. Every night something, he couldn't name what, made him stop. He told Orostegui that the closer he got to the door, the more certain he became that he didn't want to know what was on the other side. Not because he was afraid of the door, because he was afraid of himself. Mara read that and put down her coffee and didn't pick it up again. By March 2019, she had confirmed contacts at 4 research sites across 3 continents. Conservative count, 61 individuals. No shared genetics, no shared geography, no shared trauma typology. The only thing any of them had in common was the dream, and the fact that not one of them had ever opened the door. There are explanations, real ones. Mara tried all of them systematically, the way a good scientist is supposed to. The most compelling was cultural contamination, the idea that certain visual spaces become so ubiquitous in film, institutional memory, and collective anxiety that they seep into dream architecture universally. The bare room with a single bulb isn't mysterious. It appears in hundreds of films, thousands of photographs, countless accounts of interrogation rooms and detention spaces across the last century. The human brain doesn't invent in dreams, it recombines. What these patients might be experiencing is a shared cultural template, not a shared event. It's a good argument. Mara made it to herself every morning for 3 months. She almost believed it. The second explanation was researcher bias. She was asking leading questions, unconsciously shaping the descriptions. Patients are remarkably sensitive to what an interviewer expects to hear. They conform, not out of dishonesty, but because the social brain wants to satisfy. A slight change in Mara's intonation when asking about doors could be enough to orient a traumatized patient's memory toward exactly the image Mara was already looking for. She redesigned the intake protocol, blind methodology, open-ended questions only, transcribed verbatim by a colleague who didn't know what she was looking for. A neuropsychologist from the University of Reykjavik reviewed the methodology independently and found no procedural flaw. The room kept appearing. She tried the third explanation on paper, then crossed it out, then wrote it again, because it was the most unsettling and also the most scientifically interesting one she had left. Morphic resonance, coined by biologist Rupert Sheldrake in 1981, dismissed by most mainstream scientists as untestable pseudoscience. And yet, it won't go away, and Mara understood why. The theory proposes that memory and behavioral patterns can exist in fields outside individual organisms. That consciousness, under certain conditions, shares architecture across disconnected minds. Not telepathy, not mysticism, a structural hypothesis that once a pattern has been established by enough minds, it becomes easier for other minds, unconnected, uninformed, to access it, like a groove worn into the fabric of cognition itself. Most serious neuroscientists won't touch it. Mara wasn't sure she wanted it either, but morphic resonance would explain the simultaneity. The fact that the dream didn't spread from person to person. It arrived in all of them within the same 18-month window between early 2017 and mid-2018. Different countries, different time zones, different clinical histories. The crack undermined the cultural contamination theory definitively. Horror films don't tend toward diagonal ceiling cracks branching once, ending 30 centimeters from a light source. That's too particular, too consistent. No cultural template produces that level of specificity across 12 independent dreamers who had never met. She wrote morphic resonance in her notebook, crossed it out, wrote, "The dream didn't spread. It arrived, like a signal nobody had been tuned to yet." Then she picked up the phone and called Dr. Bauer again. In April 2019, Mara introduced a new element to the study. A secondary audio capture, a high-sensitivity directional microphone inside the sleep room, aimed at the subject's mouth. The kind used in speech-language research to capture subvocalization. Most patients produced nothing significant. Breath variations, occasional fragments. Patient 11 changed everything. Brynja, 38 years old, secondary school teacher from Hafnarfur. Referred after her husband found her standing in their hallway at 3 a.m., both palms flat against the wall, eyes open, for over 20 minutes, with no memory of it in the morning. On her third overnight session, Brynja's REM cycle peaked at 2:47 a.m. The EEG showed deep, stable dreaming. The microphone caught 31 seconds of subvocalized speech. At normal speed, it was indistinct. Slowed to 60%, it was words. She was counting. 1, 2, 3, pause. 5, 6, pause. 9. Not sequential. Numbers with gaps. Mara listened to the recording 17 times. She had a mathematician at the University of Iceland listen without context. He said it looked like partial coordinates, as if the dreamer was reading a display she could only partially see. Then the audio was cleaned, amplified, and beneath Brynja's voice, at a frequency just below the threshold of human hearing, there was something else. A low, steady tone, consistent, unbroken across the full 31 seconds. Mara isolated it. Frequency analysis, 18.98 Hz infrasound, below the range of perception, but within the range of physiological effect. At certain intensities, infrasound at this frequency causes feelings of unease, dread, the physical sensation of a presence in a room. Documented science, perfectly explicable, except the frequency was present in the recording, but not in the room. Mara checked the monitoring equipment, the building's HVAC, the structural resonance of the annex. Nothing produced 18.98 Hz. The tone wasn't in the air. It was in Brynja's breath. Stop for a second and think about what that means, because if you heard this from a colleague at a conference, you'd assume they'd made a measurement error. You'd be polite about it. You'd nod and quietly decide they needed a vacation. That's the correct response. That's what a careful scientist does. Mara thought the same thing. She recalibrated the equipment, ran the analysis twice more. Different software, different engineer. Still 18.98 Hz. Still from Brynja's breath. She was producing it, unconsciously, while dreaming, a sustained infrasonic tone for 31 consecutive seconds, at a frequency associated with hallucination and perceived presence. The mathematician, when Mara told him this, went quiet. Then, what if she wasn't producing it? What if she was transmitting it? Mara told him that wasn't a useful framework for empirical research. He nodded. Then he asked if the other patients had been tested. She tested them. 11 of the 14 room dreamers produced the tone. Here is where I have to be honest with you. Because everything so far is documented. Files, reports, email chains I've read myself. The research exists, the data exists, the researchers exist. But this is what Dr. Sollund told me directly 3 weeks before she took voluntary leave from Landspítali. She started dreaming the room. Not immediately, not even after months inside the research. October 14th, 2019, 2 glasses of wine. She remembers that specifically the way you remember details about nights you wish you could undo. She fell asleep on the couch in her apartment in the Hlar neighborhood sometime before midnight. She was in the room, and this is what she told me. Sitting across from me in a coffee shop in central Reykjavik, her hands flat on the table the way Brynja's hands have been flat against the wall. The room was exactly as her patients had described it. The crack, the bulb, the door. But there was something her patients hadn't mentioned. Maybe they had mentioned it and she'd filed it under irrelevant. Maybe they hadn't found the words. But when she was standing in it herself, she understood immediately why no one had flagged it. The room was warm, not comfortable, not neutral. Warm the way a room is warm when someone has been standing in it for a very long time. Warm like presence. She walked toward the door. She said she didn't want to stop. She said that block, that invisible resistance her 61 patients had described, she didn't feel it. She reached the door. She put her hand on the handle. She woke up. I asked what she thought was on the other side. She looked at her coffee for a long moment. Then she said, "I don't think it matters what's on the other side. I think what matters is that I wanted to open it. None of my patients wanted to, and I did." A pause. That's the part one can't explain, and that's the part that scares me. I thought that was the end of it. I genuinely did. I wrote it up, closed the file, went home. Then she called me back 4 days later. She returned to the lab on November 3rd, 7 hours after that conversation. She told her research assistant she needed a standard overnight session. Equipment check, data calibration. Routine. The assistant left at 11 p.m. Mara was alone. The station recorded everything automatically. Brainwave onset of light sleep at 11:23 p.m. deep delta by midnight. First REM cycle by 1:09 a.m. 4 hours and 17 minutes. No anomalies. No subvocalizations. No infrasonic tone, which I find, if I'm honest, more disturbing than if the tone had been there. At 5:26 a.m., at the edge of a second REM cycle, there is a 4-second gap in the brainwave data. Not a flat line, a gap, as if the recording equipment simply stopped receiving signal, and then resumed cleanly, as if nothing had interrupted it. 43 seconds later, I opened the door. Her voice, clear, declarative, not distressed. The chair had moved 14 inches. She'd been sitting in it when she fell asleep. The chair moved. She didn't move. The biometric data confirms her position was unchanged throughout. But the chair moved. I've spent 6 months trying to find an explanation for that chair. The most rational answer. She woke partially, moved it herself in a hypnopompic state, retains no memory of it. This happens. The brain exiting sleep can execute motor actions that consciousness doesn't record. But the 4-second EEG gap doesn't fit. You can't have a partial awakening without brainwave evidence. The data shows confirmed REM when the gap occurs. And you cannot be simultaneously in confirmed REM sleep and physically moving furniture, unless something else moved it. I know how that sounds. I'm not writing that sentence casually, but I've looked at the data. 2 independent neurologists reviewed it. Neither could account for the gap. Dr. Bauer, when I told him about the gap, went silent for almost a full minute. Then he said that in his 2013 study, one of his patients woke to find his pillow on the floor. He'd noted it as irrelevant. He said he regretted that now. Dr. Rostigai told me that Sebastian Morel, the 19-year-old who dreamed the room 47 nights in a row, had stopped dreaming it abruptly in March 2019. She considered it a positive outcome, a resolution. But he'd told her at his final session that the reason the dreams stopped was not that he had overcome it. Something had changed. He'd stopped walking toward the door. In the last several dreams, he'd simply stood in the room, still, and the sensation that had always been concentrated on the other side of the door, that presence, that warmth Mara described, had moved. It was behind him. And here's the question I can't answer that I've been sitting with since November. 61 documented patients, 3 continents, the same room, the same door. Not one of them opened it. Until maybe Mara did. What's on the other side? Maybe nothing. Maybe a neurological artifact. A universal spatial-temporal. A frequency glitch in equipment that 3 separate labs happen to share. Maybe Mara's chair slid on a smooth floor, and we're all finding patterns and randomness, because that's what human minds do when they're afraid. Or maybe the room was waiting for someone who wasn't afraid to reach the door. And maybe now, the door is open. Brynja Sigurarter still dreams the room. She told me last week. She didn't want to elaborate, but she said something about it is different now. The quality of the silence inside it. She couldn't describe it exactly, or she didn't want to. Sebastian Morel has not responded to Dr. Arosteguy's last 3 follow-up messages. His clinic file shows no new referrals. His phone number has been changed. Dr. Bauer has submitted a formal proposal for a multi-site replication study. 11 institutions have been invited. 9 have not responded. 2 have declined without explanation. Dr. Mara Sollund has not returned to the sleep lab since November 3rd. The recording is still there, on a hard drive in the annex at Landspítali. 4 hours and 17 minutes of sleep data, 1 4-second gap, and 43 seconds of silence before her own voice says what she says. Nobody has deleted it. Nobody has archived it. Nobody seems to know what to do with it. And that's where we are. 61 patients. For research sites. 1 4-second gap in a brainwave recording that no one can account for. Dr. Sollund has not returned to the sleep lab since November. Brynja Sigurarter still dreams the room, though she says something about it is different now. She won't say what. Next week, we go further into what was found on that recording after Mara spoke. Stay with me. If that 4-second gap stayed with you, the comments are open. What do you think happened in that room? Subscribe. There are more stories like this one. Turn the lights off. Press play. Don't hang up. Shadow tapes.